This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's September 19th, 2025. 40 years ago today, the wife of a Tennessee senator faced off against some of the biggest names in music at a congressional hearing. Her name was Tipper Gore, and she headed up a group called the Parents Music Resource Center, or PMRC. Her organization was concerned about the kinds of lyrics kids were hearing in rock and pop music, and it wanted Congress to mandate a kind of rating system for cassette tapes and vinyl records that would alert parents to the presence of songs about sex, drugs and alcohol, violence, or the occult, because this was right in the middle of what is now remembered as the Satanic Panic. One of the musicians with a song that had been singled out on the PMRC's Filthy 15 list was Dee Snider of Twisted Sister. And he told the congressional panel that it was wild to see the PMRC complaining about violence in his song, We're Not Gonna Take It, because the lyrics are about taking a stand, not physical fighting. Now, the video had a cartoonish kind of aggression to it, but the song itself, which is the only part that would be given a rating, said things like, we'll fight the powers that be, just don't pick our destiny, because you don't know us, you don't belong. He also pointed out that most albums already bore pretty good indicators of what the music was about. He said, and this is a great quote, I know that when I see an album cover with a severed goat's head in the middle of a pentagram between a woman's legs, that's not the kind of album I want my son to be listening to. The PMRC did not get the full-on rating system it pushed for, but those hearings are the origin story for the stark warning stickers that became a fixture on albums from that point on. In contrasting bands of black and white with an aggressive all-caps font, they said, parental advisory, explicit lyrics. And they absolutely became an indicator to many kids and teens in the late 80s and 90s that they 100% wanted to listen to whatever was on an album with that sticker. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. I remember those hearings. I was just 10, but that's old enough to have entered the stage of life where music is everything to you. And I knew several of the songs on that PMRC list because they played on the radio in heavy rotation. And the thing that gets me when I look back is that even as a little kid, when I sang along to We're Not Gonna Take It, I knew it wasn't really about physically attacking anyone. But also, as a little kid, I didn't catch the sexual connotations of Madonna's Dress You Up. And while I knew people thought Cyndi Lauper's She Bop was naughty, it went completely over my head. But because those songs were such an integral part of my experience as an 80s kid, I perked up when the news talked about those congressional hearings. And so I heard the concern that a lot of people had that rating or somehow marking songs as bad would invite a more intense limitation. If parents were warned about buying that music for their children, would people start pressuring radio stations not to play songs sold with that sticker? Would it unfairly stifle artistic expression? Was Congress overstepping its bounds? As I got older, that whole thing was used as an example in classroom discussions about censorship. Once we'd been through it and reached the other side where the warning label actually helped music sales for many artists and the standards for radio broadcasts did not change to align with the parental advisory, my teachers could use it to explain how, under the most strict definition, it's only censorship if the government blocks someone's ability to free expression. Warning labels don't bar anyone from buying an album, they'd say. So it isn't censorship to mandate those labels be on albums. And according to that definition, it wouldn't be censorship if a store adopted a policy of not selling music with warning labels. That would just be the free market at play. And my teachers would absolutely emphasize the idea that in the United States, we don't allow government censorship, period. Now, there are very nuanced discussions to be had about whether or not that is a full or accurate definition of censorship. But even if you take things from that strict angle, is government directly stifling speech? The actual way that things play out in this country can get kind of complicated. 100 years or so ago, it was actually really common for cities to have official censors or censorship boards who had the power to decree that some piece of art or literature was too racy or whatever for local standards. Ours in Nashville was headed up by a guy named Hamilton Love, and the woman who booked the Ryman took him to court when an actor who performed there in a controversial play was jailed on indecency charges. The Board of Censors in Memphis barred movie theaters from showing Ingrid Bergman films, not because of the movies themselves, but because she, in her personal life, had cheated on her husband. The novel Ulysses by James Joyce couldn't be legally sold or published anywhere in this nation for several years because a New York court declared it obscene. What I'm saying is that we have a First Amendment in this nation, but we've also got a track record of justifying censorship, government censorship. In the last few years, the state of Tennessee and some of our local governments have started pushing the limits to see how much they can restrict through book bans in schools and libraries and rules to make it harder to get books into prisons, through rules limiting where drag can be performed, with policies that bar teachers from talking about certain concepts in the classroom, all of which have led to spirited debates in council meetings, legislative hearings, and courtrooms over where the line is drawn between reasonable community protections and First Amendment violations. And in the last day and a half, the national news has been full of coverage about how the Trump administration successfully pushed Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show off the air, at least for now. ABC indefinitely suspended the show after the chairman of the FCC complained about a joke Kimmel made about the fact that the man who's charged with killing Charlie Kirk grew up in conservative circles. But as NPR reported during yesterday's morning edition, President Trump made a post on Truth Social 2 months ago that Kimmel was next, after he successfully pressured CBS to cancel Stephen Colbert's show. And just yesterday, he posted again, saying that NBC's two late-night hosts, Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, are next. So was Kimmel really targeted for a particular comment? Or because he's generally inconvenient to the administration? Today is also the anniversary of another major event in censorship history. On this day in 1974, the KGB began a large-scale campaign to discredit a dissident writer named Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And his experience is the kind of censorship that my teachers used to hold up as the example on the opposite end of the spectrum from the warning labels in music. This censorship was a kind of full-on government stifling of speech that turned out to be just the first step in trying to utterly ruin a person's life. His novels had long been banned in the USSR for discussing Stalinism and the treatment of people in gulags. This was stuff he'd experienced firsthand when he was imprisoned in labor camps for 8 years after criticizing Stalin in a private letter. But the message was clear. He was not supposed to talk about these experiences openly or honestly. His books were banned in the Soviet sphere, but got out to the West, where he was honored with a Nobel Prize in 1970. The government wouldn't allow him to accept it right away. Instead, in 1971, the KGB tried to poison him with ricin. Solzhenitsyn ended up escaping to the West. He lived in Vermont until the fall of the Soviet Union. He had criticisms for this country, too, but he was allowed to voice them freely. In just a few minutes, the payday loans that are bankrupting some Tennesseans. That's coming up after the newscast.
You know how important WPLN News has been to you and your family, and you have seen how high-quality local journalism is necessary to a thriving community. You can ensure that this service stays strong and stays available to all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Join the Producers Circle with your gift of $100 or more each month and make the bold statement that you support the mission of a more informed and engaged community. Start your philanthropic journey with Nashville Public Radio today at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Nashville and most of Middle Tennessee are under an air quality advisory today. Dry soil and heat may be creating a feedback loop that is worsening air quality. A large portion of the region is now in moderate or severe drought, and cities have reached 90 degrees this week. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency recommends avoiding prolonged or heavy exercise outside. Both ozone pollution, also known as smog, and particle pollution are forecasted to remain elevated today. As President Trump deploys the National Guard to Memphis to combat crime, Nashville's mayor is making the case that Metro does not need the same intervention. On WPLN's Daily Show, This is Nashville, Mayor Freddie O'Connell pointed to programs like REACH, which pairs paramedics with mental health clinicians to respond to 911 calls, and Partners in Care, another co-response effort from the MNPD, as evidence that Nashville is working to address crime.
What we've seen in the nation's capital over the past several weeks of summer is an extraordinary event. And I hope that, mayors across America are looking at this as something that we should be considering how we're making the case publicly for the things that we're doing on the ground that are focused on the safety of our residents.
Trump has not said he'll deploy the Guard to Nashville, but Tennessee congressional representative Andy Ogles, who often boasts a close relationship to the president, has called for it. O'Connell previously characterized Ogles' comments as absurd and, quote, showing off for the president. The U.S. Department of Education says it will withhold $350 million for colleges and universities that serve Asian, Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic students. The Tennessee Lookout reports the funds will now go to programs that don't include what the Trump administration calls discriminatory racial and ethnic quotas. The move aligns with efforts to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. The shift comes after the state of Tennessee sued the U.S. Department of Education over grants for Hispanic-serving colleges. The department now says it's unconstitutional for federal funds to go to colleges with racial quotas. The move may face legal challenges. Early voting is underway in the primary for Tennessee's special congressional election. WPLN's Mariana Bacallao spoke with Nashville voters who cast their ballot on the first day of early voting. Democratic voters seem split among the four candidates running, but they gave similar reasons for coming to the polls.
The Republicans really have me kind of scared right now, and so I'm making sure the Democrats are getting as many votes as they can.
Like doing away with the money for NPR.
Health care. Money taken away from health care.
So, we got this gerrymandered District 7 here. That's we just hope that, Nashville's values will be represented well.
Maintaining and defending democracy is important.
That was Harry Shepard, Sandra and Jim Corrin, and Stephen and Kim Finch. Early voting runs until October 2nd. The primary election is on October 7th. More than a year into contract negotiations with United Auto Workers, leaders at the Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga are presenting what they call their final offer. The deal would increase pay by 20% over the next 4 years, in addition to a $4,000 bonus if the contract is ratified, plus an extra $1,500 if they approve it by the end of October. Volkswagen also proposed automatically adding up to 45 cents to hourly pay based on inflation. And the Chattanooga Times-Free Press reports the offer includes profit sharing based on sales and an increased attendance bonus. One sticking point could be health care costs. The union had demanded no premium, no deductible health insurance with low out-of-pocket costs. Volkswagen says that demand was not economically feasible and that the contract the company offered would decrease workers' health care expenses. A representative for UAW did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Volkswagen employs about 4,000 workers in Chattanooga. It recently announced that 160 will be furloughed, citing slumping sales of its electric SUV. Driving between Nashville and Murfreesboro can be so bad some people would pay money to get past traffic faster. And that's why the Tennessee Department of Transportation plans to add toll lanes along that stretch of I-24. Now, several public information meetings are set to get your input. They'll take place in Smyrna, Antioch, and South Nashville starting September 30th. The online public comment period runs through October 23rd. The state hopes to get help funding and building the $5 billion Choice Lanes project through a public-private partnership.
You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org.
A law passed more than a decade ago in Tennessee created an entirely new kind of payday loan called the Flex Loan. It operates more like a line of credit. You can borrow 10 times the amount that was allowed before, up to $5,000. And between the interest rate and fees, borrowers are paying nearly 280% in interest. Importantly, the law also allows lenders to collect attorney fees, making it much more likely they will sue you if you go into default. And people have defaulted by the tens of thousands. Reporter Adam Friedman's investigation for the Tennessee Lookout and ProPublica found more than 100,000 lawsuits from a single company, Advance Financial. That reporting was the centerpiece of a recent This Is Nashville episode. Host Blake Farmer had on two of the state lawmakers who voted against that legislation a decade ago, Republican Mike Sparks and Democrat Mike Stewart.
Do you see some value in having this sort of access to quick cash? I mean, there are obviously people who need it. Is there a way, in your view, that it could be, regulated in a way that is worthwhile?
I mean, look at how much money they're making off these things. I don't have a problem with someone making a profit, but here's what bankers aren't seeing. I've shared this with bankers is some of these individuals could be bankable. They could be home buyers, but when they get tied down in this, I call it the slavery of debt. It's got some serious implications in the next 5 to 10 years. People aren't seeing it. Fortunately, my town, city of Smyrna, I reside at, that I was born at, they took a position probably about 6 years ago. You can't open one of these in Smyrna. You can't open a title Mack.
Is that right?
Yeah, Smyrna may be the only town that's done this. And you could look up and down the road. They're everywhere. I happened to take a tour with Melissa Harold, our court clerk in Rutherford County. Just spend a day with her on helping people like expungements and making sure that folks have access to look up their records, that sort of thing. It seems like there's some glitches. There needs to be better communication. So I was sitting with her, and we walked by, and it was all this boxes of letters going out, and they were all garnishments.
Wow.
Oh, I'm talking hundreds. And I was like, whoa, maybe I'm not here for this expungement issue. Maybe I'm here for this issue.
Wow.
And the sad thing, Blake, other than you and maybe Adam, there's no one talking about this. I mean, can you name a main media sources talking about this issue?
Well, your point is so well taken that it happens. I know several years ago I was reporting on medical debt around the country, and of course this is all tied to that. I mean, sometimes people are borrowing this money to pay off a medical bill that somebody else says, we're going to sue you if you don't pay. So, but it happens so quietly. Then you go to one of these courtrooms and you see just how many people are coming in every day. Mike Stewart, can you talk about what changes when you allow, like this 2014 bill did, that they could sue and sort of charge for attorney's fees? What does that change in terms of the stakes here?
Yeah, I mean, it changes everything. It means that you can ruin a family's life with one of these products. It used to be you had payday loans, which are a terrible product, and they were capped at $500. Essentially, made it impossible to have, or some of them were capped at $500. There were different products, but most of these products before 2014, it didn't make any sense for these companies to sue people.
Yeah,
they might not give them more business, but they really couldn't come after a family and take their cars, take their property, put them in horrible debt. Whereas now, with these flex loans in 2014, we set it up so that it's very easy for these companies now to go after people because they can get the attorney's fees paid out of the judgments. And so basically it turns all of our sessions courts across the state into bankruptcy-creating machines. This was horrible legislation. You asked, is there some purpose to these products? And I would argue, I don't know, go down to Georgia. Georgia seems like their economy is doing pretty well. These loans are totally illegal in Georgia.
North Carolina, too. Arkansas.
North Carolina, Arkansas. So all this is totally unnecessary. It's a huge plague put on Tennessee families. And as Mike was saying, it all happens kind of obscurely till you go down to Sessions Court one day in any county in the state, see all these people, working people who have children, who are trying to get Christmas presents, and they're being dragged down by the neck by these ridiculous products that we should have never made legal in the first place.
That's former Representative Mike Stewart of Nashville and State Representative Mike Sparks of Smyrna in conversation with Blake Farmer on This Is Nashville. An episode this week centered on payday lending and the fallout from the new flex loans created by the legislature a decade ago. These kinds of high-interest loans are outlawed in 20 states, including Georgia and North Carolina. You can hear the full episode in the This Is Nashville podcast feed. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/Nashvillager. And thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up next week.